Daily updates directly to your inbox, plus subscribe. Thank you for subscribing. Could not subscribe? Try again later. Invalid email. Georges St-Pierre ended a 4-year exile from UFC in style to claim the middleweight title with an impressive victory over Michael Bisping. The 36-year-old Canadian, who reigned as the welterweight champion for almost 6 years, is widely considered one of the sport's modern greats and returned to steal the show at UFC 217 at Madison Square Garden with a third-round submission of Bisping. In taking the Manchester fighter's belt, St-Pierre becomes only the 4th fighter in UFC history to become a champion in 2 weight divisions. He bossed the bout from the start, with a barrage of early strikes that left Bisping with bruises under both eyes and secured takedowns in the opening 2 rounds. A further takedown in the 3rd round saw St-Pierre go for the kill, and he secured a win with a rear naked choke. St-Pierre said in the ring afterwards, shown on UFC.com, "I don't have the words in my mouth right now. It is a dream come true. He hurt me hard. A few times I got stunned. I tried to hide it, but I wouldn't like to do that fight again. This isn't really my real weight. I did it for the challenge. I'm still a welterweight size. It's not about who has got the biggest balls. It's about who has got the best technique, setting traps and intelligence. I was fighting a bigger man." Quote. Bisping added, "You have got to give it to Georges. He was the better man. It's a hell of a squeeze he's got there. I'm not done. I know I spoke about retirement, but Georges was the better man. No excuses. Here's what we learned on a night to remember in New York." The Mirror reports, 1 Georges St-Pierre beat Michael Bisping and is a UFC champion once again. It was a night of memorable moments, but perhaps the image that will forever last in time is the one where Georges St-Pierre defeated Michael Bisping to claim the UFC middleweight title. Many expected St-Pierre to be the smaller man, but on the night, the Canadian looked incredible with his muscular physique cutting an intimidating figure standing across the octagon from the British champion. St-Pierre looked settled early on, and he got the better of round 1 as he worked well behind his jab to rock back Bisping's head on multiple occasions. Bisping fought back in round 2 though, and he himself landed some nice combinations as started to utilize his kicks well to push the Canadian onto the back foot. Round 3 proved to be the decider as St-Pierre started it well by taking the Brit down to the mat. Bisping did well to work his way back to his feet, but as they exchanged strikes, St-Pierre caught him with a huge left hand to send him down to the mat. From there, the Canadian rushed in to finish him with strikes, but Bisping bravely fended him off using his legs for about 20 seconds. Just when it looked like Bisping was going to be able to recover, St-Pierre caught him with an elbow and then worked his way to the Brit's back, where he sunk in a rear naked choke. With the crowd going insane, Bisping was choked unconscious and the fight was over. Georges St-Pierre is once again a champion in the UFC. It was an incredible climax in what turned out to be one of the greatest and most unpredictable nights of UFC action. 2 Jules Dillashaw is back on top at 135 pounds. Bad blood has been in the air for over a year with TJ Dillashaw and Cody Garbrandt, and thankfully, last evening all the drama ended with a bantamweight title fight to remember. Garbrandt got the better of round 1, and with just seconds left, he knocked Dillashaw down to the mat with a stiff right hand. The buzz saved Dillashaw from being finished, but after sitting on his stool for 60 seconds, he came out in round 2 a different man. Dillashaw turned the tide of the fight early on, and he landed a head kick to send Garbrandt down to the mat. Garbrandt recovered to his feet, but just a minute later a devastating Dillashaw right hand sent him crashing back down to the floor, and the challenger finished him off with strikes. A rivalry that had been building up for over a year was finally over, and it finished with TJ Dillashaw claiming back his UFC bantamweight title. 3. Rose Namajunas is the new strawweight queen. Joanna Jędrzejczyk was set to make history last evening and overtake Ronda Rousey as the woman with most UFC title defenses. But as is often the case in the UFC, the fairy tale doesn't always go to plan. Rose Namajunas cut a defeated figure all week in the lead up to the fight, while Jędrzejczyk looked increasingly confident as fight night approached. That mattered little when the cage door closed though, and Namajunas clipped Jędrzejczyk early with a left hand that knocked her down to the mat. The Pole recovered from that knockdown, but it was the beginning of the end, as minutes later Namajunas again caught her flush with a left. Jędrzejczyk straight to the mat, and Namajunas followed her down, winging in punches as the champion turtled up on her knees. With Namajunas unrelenting with her ground strikes, Jędrzejczyk tapped the mat and the referee stepped in. Against all odds and all pre-fight expectations, Rose Namajunas is the new UFC strawweight champion. 4. Stephen Thompson continues to hang around the welterweight title picture. He may have failed to take the belt of Tyron Woodley twice already, but Stephen Thompson doesn't look like he's out of title contention yet at 170 pounds. Wonderboy faced Jorge Masvidal on the main card, and he cruised to an easy unanimous decision win. The fight was contested totally on the feet, and Thompson had his timing down from round 1 as he picked away Masvidal at range with his kicks. Thompson struck Masvidal down to the mat with a right hand in the second, but Gamebred rallied and bravely got back to his feet to trade again. After more of the similar in round 3, Thompson went to get the nod on the scorecards, 30-26, 30-27, 30-27. Speaking on the microphone afterwards, Thompson warned Woodley he hadn't given up on getting another crack at his title. 5. James Vick is a huge and dangerous guy in the lightweight division. Texan James Vick did something that no man has ever done before last evening. Finished Joe Duffy inside the distance. Duffy was significantly smaller than the 6 foot 3 inches tall Vick, and the two men looked like they belonged in totally different weight classes, standing across the cage from another. Regardless, Duffy had a good first round, and he was using his footwork well to negotiate the big reach advantage that Vick had over him. Keeping the fight at short range looked to be the key to Duffy winning the fight. But in round 2 it proved his downfall as he walked into a beautiful uppercut from Vick with just seconds left in the round. The Irishman fell to the mat and tried to defend himself, but with Vick still landing shots, the fight had to be waved off with just a second left. It was a tough call, but the referee on balance did the right thing. Vick is going to pose a lot of the fighters in the lightweight top 15 a lot of problems. 6. Controversy is never far when Mark Godbeer is around. British heavyweight Mark Godbeer competed on the undercard and was involved in a crazy finish that saw him win the fight via disqualification. Godbeer fought Walt Harris in a fight that was rescheduled from last month after Harris was pulled from their fight just hours ahead of UFC 216 to replace Derek Lewis against Fabricio Werdum. Godbeer got taken down to the mat early on in the fight, but with a minute left in the first round he rose back to his feet and the two started trading again. Controversy then struck as Harris kicked Godbeer low below the belt, who instantly clutched his groin. The referee got between the two fighters quickly, but Harris didn't stop and he head kicked Godbeer, who was unable to defend himself. It was a blatant illegal shot, and with Godbeer left stunned and dazed from the impact, the fight was called off and Harris was disqualified for the illegal strike. After one fight cancellation and one disqualification, it's probably about time these two went their separate ways. 7. Ovince St. Preux isn't just dangerous on the mat. Light heavyweight Ovince St. Preux has been making a name for himself recently, choking guys out on the mat with his patented Von Flu. but last night it was his kicking that did the damage. St. Preux and Corey Anderson were tied at one piece leading into the third round, and with both men looking like they were slowing down, a finish didn't look on the cards, with both men throwing single strikes in the center of the octagon. St. Preux faked low and then unleashed a brutal head kick to leave Anderson out of cold on his back. Whoever steps in the octagon with St. Preux next is going to have to be ready for anything, because the man from Haiti is seemingly dangerous everywhere. 8. Ricardo Ramos' spinning back elbow knockout was the perfect show starter, opening a fight card. Isn't always the best of jobs, and it's often the case that a fight can be played out front of just a handful of people. Thankfully that wasn't the case last evening, and the few thousand in the stands would have been very pleased with their decision to take head to the venue early. The first fight of the night featured one of the most brutal knockouts of the year, with Brazilian Ricardo Ramos literally shutting Ayman Zahabi's body down with an incredible spinning back elbow. The fight was deep into the third round when it happened, and absolutely no one, including poor Zahabi, saw it coming. The impact left the tri-star MMA stiff unconscious, and luckily the referee dove in before further damage could be dealt. Last night was full of incredible highlights, but this one should forever be remembered.